Pixar, the animation studio that made most of our childhood awesome. From Toy Story, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and up to Inside Out, among many others. Pixar has made timeless classics one after another, with countless awards in its name, including 18 Oscars, and its movies making billions of dollars at the box office. Pixar pioneered computer-animated feature films. With every one of its movies, Pixar was able to give its audience the magic that stayed with you throughout your adult life. And I say timeless classic because no matter how old you get, when you sit and watch these movies, you feel the same awe you did when you were a kid. Of course, which character you relate to and what you take away from the movie might differ, but you get the point. But recently, Pixar has been letting us down with films that I can best describe as mediocre. Also, the competitors in the industry are catching up, and people are wondering if Pixar is losing its charm. Its recent films have not been able to leave the sort of mark Pixar's previous movies left. Elemental had the lowest opening day in Pixar history, earning only $11.8 million. So, what's happened to Pixar? How did it go from being the undisputed king of animation to the verge of being dethroned? First, let's see the history of this beloved computer animation studio. Initially, Pixar was not an independent studio. It started as a part of Lucasfilm. It was known as the Graphics Group before it was named Pixar. Before making big feature films, Pixar made commercials for various brands. CG animation was pretty new then, so it helped Pixar get a name in the market. It was in 1986 that the company became an independent company, and it was named Pixar. Steve Jobs was one of the first people to see potential in Pixar and offered to invest in the company. Citing that his offer was too low, George Lucas initially declined. He eventually accepted the offer as he could not find any other investors for the company. In February of 1986, Jobs paid $5 million to George Lucas to acquire the technology rights and invested $5 million more as capital.
In 1986, he bought Pixar for $10 million. Like Next, Pixar would sell an expensive high-end computer, but it wouldn't sell very well.
This made him one of Pixar's biggest investors, giving him a seat on the board of directors as the chairman. Eventually, Jobs increased investment in the company in exchange for an increased stake. The company was in dire need of investment because it was suffering financial loss. The total investment of Jobs reached $50 million, giving him complete control of the company. In the 1990s, Pixar and Disney made a $26 million deal to make 3 computer-animated feature films. They had no idea that this would change the world of animation forever and give Pixar the level of success it could not have imagined. The first film to come out of this collaboration was Toy Story. Toy Story was an instant hit and a global success. It was the first ever computer-animated feature film, and everyone loved it. Toy Story also showed the world the true potential of Pixar.
Everybody kind of knew that if Toy Story worked out, it would launch this industry. There would be no Pixar without Buzz and Woody.
The film grossed more than $373 million worldwide. The company went public on November 29, 1995, and it became the biggest IPO of the year. The stock went up from $22 to $45 in its first hour of trading. Its stock climbed up to $49 and closed at $39. Toy Story was just the start. Little did people know what Pixar had in store for them. People consider this era of Pixar as its most innovative era, as it produced hit after hit. Whatever Pixar came out with, people thought that it was the best work yet, and nothing could beat it. But Pixar would prove them wrong by bringing out another film with amazing innovation and breathtaking storytelling that left everyone in awe again. They were able to do this again and again. They first did it with Toy Story in 1999. Toy Story 2 came out and it was loved by people as much as the first one. The next movies after the Toy Story sequel were Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, WALL-E, and Up. Yep, all of these were just amazing. This is how consistent Pixar was. You see, the movies I mentioned here are not just movies for most of us. These are emotions. They've been able to be a part of our life. This is how impactful Pixar has been in most people's childhood. One of the major strengths of Pixar was how well it delivered the story and reached an audience of every age, be it the talking cars and toys, or the rat who cooks. The stories were incredible, and they had some sort of lesson in them, but much of the emphasis was on the overall story rather than what the key takeaway was. Oh, how this has changed. More on that later. It was not like other studios did not exist. Pixar overshadowed them with its high-quality content. The audience adored everything Pixar came out with, to the point where every other studio wanted the Pixar look. The studio stopped experimenting with different styles and started following what Pixar was doing. The audience clearly loved what Pixar was doing, and that was the thing selling in the market, so why take a risk, right? But the thing is, other studios were not as good as Pixar in delivering the story, so even with the same animation style, they could not leave the mark in the market that Pixar could. This made Pixar the undisputed king of animation, but the kingdom has started to crumble. In the last decade or so, it's almost as if Pixar has lost its charm and that magic it once had. It brings out one mediocre project after another, and the competitors are getting ahead of it. So what has happened to Pixar? Well, it would not be an exaggeration to say Disney happened. As I mentioned earlier, Disney and Pixar go way back. The companies had disagreements over the production of Toy Story 2. It was never settled, even after various attempts to reach an agreement throughout 2001 to 2005. Eventually, Disney ended up buying Pixar for $7.4 billion in 2006.
Disney had a complicated relationship with Pixar. How did you convince Steve Jobs to sell you Pixar, and was that an easy decision to convince the board to buy Pixar at what was thought to be a pretty high price?
Yeah, we paid over $7 billion for Pixar, and it was an idea that I had right away. In fact,
We've made a video about Disney as well, and if you've not checked that out, make sure to watch it. So yeah, back to the video. I say Disney happened because before 2006, Pixar was an independent company, and now Disney controlled it, which means it had less control, and most importantly, less creative freedom. Well, you know what they say, corporation kills creativity. Disney, the big corporation, cares about money, and it shows from its constant money grab tactics. It is doing the same thing to Pixar, not surprising as it owns the company. Since the acquisition of Pixar by Disney, it is almost as if a new era of Pixar has been started, and that is the money grab era. Rather than making anything original, Disney began to incorporate everything it was doing into Pixar. So Pixar, too, like Disney, became sequels and spin-off machines. What people loved the most about Pixar was its originality and how different the stories felt. But now, with the constant sequels, it felt like the same movie over and over again. It feels like the films were made in a factory. There seems to be some sort of disconnect between the audience and the studio, or more precisely, Disney, because we all know who's calling the shots here. Disney has made Pixar risk-averse, and it seems to be playing safe with the sequels and spin-offs. Let's just say it's not working out too well for them. Cars 3, Finding Dory, The Incredibles 2, Monsters University, and oh wait, they're also making a sequel of Inside Out, Toy Story 2, 3, 4, and they're now making the 5th one. At this point, I feel like these Toy Story sequels will probably outlive us. Jokes apart, you get what I mean. Many people think Toy Story did not need a 4th part, and it should have ended in part 3. Surprisingly, Toy Story 4 won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature.
And the Oscar goes to Toy Story 4. Josh Cooley, Mark Nielsen, and Jonas Rivera.
Aside from this, Pixar is also having to deal with competitors catching up to them. In 2017, Sony released Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This was a game changer in the animation industry. Until now, the studio went for the Pixar look, but Sony took the risk and went with something different, and people loved it. Sony outdid itself with the sequel, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This set the bar very high.
There's only one Spider-Man, but there is another universe. It looks and sounds like yours, but it's not.
I'm telling you, this movie is something else. If you've been putting it off for some reason, I highly recommend you go and watch it. The other studios realized that people had grown tired of the same animation style from every studio, and were now ready to embrace different styles. They started experimenting and taking risks. DreamWorks also decided to experiment and release Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in a different style of animation than what was prevalent in the industry. It was a massive hit.
I am Puss in Boots.
While all this was happening, Disney refused to take risks, be innovative, and bring something new to the audience. It was as if Disney did not care about anything until their movies made money, but they failed to realize this was not sustainable. Streaming was getting super popular, so Disney decided to have their own streaming service. This could not have happened at a worse time, especially for Pixar. Because of the pandemic, people couldn't leave the house, so there was no way people could go to the theater to watch films. Rather than waiting for things to return to normal so that the movies could get theater releases, many were sent straight to Disney+. Movies like Luca, Turning Red, and even Soul did not get a chance to be shown in theater. When things got back to normal, guess which movie they decided to release in the theater? Lightyear. Yep, a Toy Story spin-off. They can't stop milking Toy Story, can they? And it was a huge flop. It took $200 million to make the movie, while it made just around $227 million. Probably did not even break even with the marketing costs and everything. Another problem with Pixar? The marketing. It is almost as if they have no clue about what they're doing. Take an example of their latest film, Elemental. When the trailer came out, it was marketed as the love story between the two characters who could not be together for some reason. But it was anything but that. People felt like they had seen the movie's whole plot in the trailer. They thought it was not worth watching, and thus the low opening. It earned just $11.8 million on its opening day, the lowest opening in Pixar
another
history.
costly misfire. The film cost $200 million to make, but it made less than $30 million in its opening weekend. That's one of the worst debuts in the studio's history. So, has Pixar lost its mojo? Here to discuss.
As more people watched it, they realized the movie was decent, and not just a love story. Word of mouth spread, and many people went to watch it. But by now, the damage had been done. Despite such a low opening, the movie gained momentum and grossed $486.7 million worldwide. Seriously, who's in charge of marketing here? Also, most Pixar movies nowadays are following Disney's path. They are highly focused on what the film is trying to convey rather than being light, fun, and feel-good content. It's not like the older Pixar movies did not have messages. They did, but it did not feel like it was being pushed down your throat. You had to figure it out in the older films. But now, the movies as a whole are the message. There is also very little incentive to watch movies in the theater these days. Let's be honest, the tickets aren't exactly cheap, and add in the snacks and food. So why spend so much money, especially in this economy, on tickets when you can watch those on the streaming service in a few months? Lack of innovation, limited creative freedom because of Disney, and a sort of disconnect with the audience seems to be the major problems of Pixar. It's not that Pixar has completely lost its charm. People still enjoy their content. But for the past 10 to 15 years, Pixar spoiled its audiences with one masterpiece after another, because of which the expectations of the people are very high. And it has been unable to meet those expectations for a while. People are super excited about Elio as it looks more original, and people have a lot of expectation from it. Only time will tell if it meets their expectation or disappoints them.
I think there's been a mistake.
You're not the leader of all Earth?
Sorry for the mix-up.
Commence memory wipe.
No, wait!
I think Pixar, to some extent, has become a victim of its own success. Its initial films set the bar too high, often exceeding the audience's expectations. The role Pixar has played in animation cannot be discarded. It paved the path for many other studios. Many of us would not love animation as much without Pixar. We can only hope that Pixar can make a comeback and come out of Disney's shadow. It might be difficult for them to reach the heights of old Pixar, but we can all agree that they definitely can do better. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Intellectual Digest out.